Welcome to Counter Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Friday, the 3rd of February 2023. Going to Nigeria and West Africa, 14,000 people have sued for damages against the Shell oil company for its massive pollution in the Niger Delta communities. 14,000 people from the Ogale and Bila areas of the Niger Delta and Ogoniland are currently trying to sue Shell in the British courts in London. Shell has operated for 86 years in the West African country of Nigeria, and in 2022 last year accrued $40 billion of profits, making last year the year which returned the greatest amounts of profits to the company. These profits are made exactly on the exploitation of the land and labour of people like the Niger Delta. Shell is a parent company to the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria, its daughter company, and as an attempted means to wrangle out of their responsibility and culpability of their neo-colonial crimes in Nigeria, the Shell company is trying to deflect culpability to the company of Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria, rather than the parent company being Shell itself. The pollution as a result of Shell's activities in pilfering the mineral wealth of the Niger Delta includes destroying the entire traditional economy and livelihoods of the peasant people there, particularly around farming and fishing. Oil pollution saturates nearly every community and causes great havoc in the health of the people, and especially children and mothers impacted in the communities. Indeed, the child mortality of children in their first month doubles if the mother lives close to an oil spill. The people of the Niger Delta have taken to many different means of protesting these neo-colonial crimes in their communities, including sometimes abducting members of the Shell company for ransom and for other demands around their environment. Nigeria itself is one of the biggest populations in Africa of any given state, and also it's a state that has some of the greatest amount of mineral wealth in the form of oil, making it a very important strategic place for the former colonizers and leading European Western nations to ensure Nigeria is kept in a state of division and paralysis at the grassroots amongst its masses. Going to the Central African Republic now, the closely associated with Putin Wagner group has suffered heavy losses in clashes with rebels in the border areas with Sudan and Chad. There are over 1,000 Wagner mercenaries in the Central African Republic. We are talking about some of the most nastiest, racist, bigoted white men organized as a killing organization and machine being deployed into some of the poorest countries in the world. The CAR is one of the poorest countries in the world, and they've been conducting massacres against civilians now for quite a few instances. Last year in gold mines close to the border with Sudan in CAR, Wagner occupied those communities for 6 weeks, which led to the deaths of many gold miners there. When we're faced with a situation where up to a dozen African countries have the presence of the Wagner white supremacist violent militia and mercenaries on their soil, and they're clashing with African-based rebel groups and communities, one can only but take the side of the Africans against Wagner. Why should Wagner commit massacres? Why should Wagner occupy African states with their viciously racist modus operandi? And why should Wagner pilfer the mineral wealth in the form of gold of the African people? When faced with a white supremacist mercenary violent project and Africans, it's clear and just who one should take sides with. Going to Palestine, the colonizing regime of Tel Aviv has conducted up to 10 airstrikes in the Gaza Strip. Since 2007, the colonial regime of Israel has blockaded the few million people living in the tiny strip of land called Gaza, and once every year or so conducts a major, mainly aerial bombardment and massacre against the people of Gaza. These airstrikes, Israel claims, was in response to rocket attacks emanating from Gaza against Israeli settlements conducted by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is a radical Marxist and socialist militant organization of the Palestinian freedom struggle. These rocket attacks have been in response and in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance in East Jerusalem and occupied West Bank. It's gone on now for over a decade that Israel decides that they will respond to the just responses of an occupied and blockaded ghettoized people, that's the Gazans, with a massive bombardment that results in the killing of hundreds and several hundreds of children and civilians in Gaza. Finally, going to occupied Ireland, a former British soldier who goes by the name David Jonathan Holden, who killed, when he was 18 himself, who killed a 23-year-old young Irishman called Aidan McAnespie, has been given a suspended sentence of 3 years in a British court. Aidan McAnespie was killed by the British Army and killed by Holden himself in February 1988 when he was going to a Gaelic Athletic Association event when he was shot in the back by the British Army soldier Holden, who was manning a checkpoint. Holden has shown no remorse throughout the trial towards the family of Aidan McAnespie. And the whole situation in Irish people trying to hold to account those British soldiers who have conducted murder and death in their communities remains a very hotly contested political issue. The far right and the right wing are in support of British soldiers who have occupied Ireland and committed crimes there, and argue they should not face any kind of accountability. But also there's an Irish Republican revolutionary framework which is shared by revolutionary frameworks of most anti-colonial movements that argues that there is no justice that can be meted out by the colonizing power itself. And the only justice that oppressed and colonized people can achieve is the justice by means of their revolutionary uprisings and victories as we go forward. Please do continue to subscribe to Counter Narrative News on YouTube and continue to like, comment and share. Many thanks.